Hello, everyone. I think there's some new people here, so I would like to take a second to introduce myself. So my name is Stéphane Leblanc. After 30 years as a senior executive in large companies, mostly aerospace, 3 years ago, I embraced what I think is my purpose in life, which is to create spaces for people to transform and elevate consciousness in the world. I was introduced to Joe Weston maybe 3 months ago by a common friend, someone that is I guess, assistant facilitator for Joe. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Joe Weston, who's, and this is the official bio, Joe, here, so enjoy it. So, the international workshop facilitator, because he truly works around the world, author, consultant, life coach, creative, social activist, and advocate for peace. And I promised Joe that I was going to hopefully run a walk here in Montreal for peace. And his book is called Respectful Confrontation. So I attended Joe's workshop maybe 2 months ago, Joe, 2.5 months ago.
Yeah, something like that.
And it really rocked my world because it was something that I was really looking forward to manage confrontations better, but also to have more embodiment. So it kind of met both, and I was floored by the simplicity and the depth of it. So Joe, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. I just want to say my colleague Todd Hoskins is here as well.
Yeah.
And he's here for support. If you have any questions for him as well, he can offer that. And it's great to see you. And I always say it's fascinating who shows up for things like this, and that it says a lot about you. And for people who get to know me, they get to know I tend to talk in terms of superhero movies. Like I talk in like, what are your superpowers, and seeing things as heroic. And I think for someone who, for us who have such busy lives, that we choose to take time out of our busy lives to invest in something called respectful confrontation says something a lot about you. So thank you for being here. And I hope I can be of support in giving you some insights into how this work can support you.
Beautiful, Joe. And before we get into the crux of the subject, which is respectful confrontation, it's always fun, Joe, to get a bit of a sliver of someone's life history. You know, who are you and how did you come to this work? And, you know, your whole background that allowed you to create all this body of knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah, well, let me see if I can do the shorter version. So I was born in New York City. And what I start there because I always say that just being in New York every day was an examination of confrontation and conflict. And so I guess I was in that environment of how people engage with each other, and without subtleties or finding other ways to be subtle. And my childhood was pretty rough in terms of it was expected that I would fight, and we would all fight. And my dad was a fighter, and he also hung out with the wrong crowd sometimes. He spent some time in jail when I was around 12 years old. So I come from that kind of volatile environment where at sort of very young age, I understood what is one of the fundamental questions I've always asked, even at that time, even as a young boy, which has really motivated my life journey and motivates my life purpose and is the motivating force behind the respectful confrontation work, is why is it, even though we know better, even though we're a relatively intelligent species, and at the moment we have all the information we need at our fingertips, and technologically, as John would say, we can see the close-up pictures of Pluto right now. We can see into the smallest of atoms. So technologically, we're advanced. But why is it, even though we know better, we still have arguments and fights, and on a larger scale, crime and war and hunger and oppression? Now, most people would say, well, that's just the way we are. And that's an accurate answer, but I was never satisfied with that as an answer. I wanted to investigate further. Why is it? Why is it if logically we know it's not beneficial to be in arguments and fights, that hunger is not a good thing, et cetera, that the planet's on fire, literally right now? What's keeping us in these patterns of arguments and fights? And that's the investigation of this work, is to go deeper. And so I was always seeking. I ended up deciding to, after university, to bum around Europe for a year. And I started in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and I stayed for 18 years. And that was a really important part of my development, of understanding a different culture. I learned a lot from the Dutch, how to think logically and analytically, as opposed to my passionate, loud New York way of being. And I learned the importance of debate. I mean, just topographically, it's such a small country. They had to learn how to work together. Whereas as with Canada and with the United States, everything is so spread out. So there's not a real need to have to work together in a sense. There it was. So they understood how to debate and how to have discussions. Sometimes it was too much. They debated everything. It would take 20 minutes to decide what we were going to have for dinner. But then after a while, it got to be too much. But I learned how to rewire my own viewpoints, my own habits, my own patterns, and my own tendencies. I questioned them. I had the opportunity to do what I call courageous self-reflection and see that the way I see things isn't necessarily the way everybody sees it, or isn't necessarily the way it actually is. And that's a big moment. One of the big takeaways that people have in our trainings, when we do trainings like at NASA, I've been doing trainings at NASA for over 10 years now. And every training at the end, when we ask people, what did you get from this day? One of the number one things that people say is, I never considered that the problem I'm having with my colleague, that I'm contributing to some of that problem. That in itself, I think, could shift the whole world if we dared what I call courageous self-reflection, to look at our own patterns and how are we contributing to an issue. And that's what I learned from being in Holland. I started doing, I have a background in martial arts, so that's what's influenced the work, particularly Tai Chi and Aikido, of learning how to connect mind and body, how to regulate the nervous system, how to use energetic forces in achieving something. And I took that kind of understanding force and the softness in that, diverting an attack into how we verbally communicate. And that's how I created the respectful confrontation method. Also from a lot of compassion practice I've done and understanding the body and nervous system regulation. And I was doing corporate trainings in the early 90s in communication, particularly dealing with aggression. And that's how I started developing my technique of how to approach aggression in a more effective way that doesn't lead to more aggression. And then, because my world is all about peace, I was really it really hurt my heart when the United States invaded Iraq in 2003. And I was still living in Europe, and I said, I have to go back to the States. I want to see if there's something I can do to influence what's happening in the States. And I started in Northern California, and now I'm in Washington, D.C. And that's when I started doing officially the Respectful Confrontation workshops in 2005. And that was mostly for personal development. I just knew so many people who I felt had something to offer. They had an impact. They had their wisdom or gifts or talents, but weren't feeling empowered enough to step up and have the impact they wanted. So this work really is about, it's a method and a practice that helps you to stand in your power, speak your truth, get your needs met in a way where you don't get harmed and other people don't get harmed. And there are a lot of communication models that teach you, or a lot of personal development models that teach you how to stand in your power. A lot of that teach you how to speak your truth, to get your needs met. But the piece that we're adding this is that to do that in a way where you don't get harmed and where you don't harm others. And that brings in the aspect of having the courage to go into the difficult conversations. And not only to go, and not to go into them with a fight attitude, but to go in with them with an open heart, with compassion, with the courage to speak your truth, and even more importantly, the courage to hear someone else's truth. And that's what the power of the work is, where people have said, whether it's for personal relationship, whether it's for in corporate, whether it's for negotiation, whether it's for peace negotiation, that people have found that when they've used this model, that in the past where there were no solutions, suddenly new solutions emerge. And that, so I'll get more to that, but in this process of doing it for individuals, I started getting invited to organizations, including NASA, the World Bank, Booz Allen Hamilton, and other organizations, and to do this on a corporate level for leadership development. We've now developed a program called Resilient Power Leadership. We've developed an assessment tool called the 4 Pillars of Resilient Power, about how you can, through an assessment, see what your relationship is with your own authentic power and how much you're tapping into power. So you can see that the whole work is redefining what power is. And one of the fundamental beliefs that we have with respectful confrontation is that it's in your vulnerability that your true power is revealed. And that the whole work is based on that, and this is skills-based learning. It's not just the idea, just having the idea, yeah, I'm just gonna be vulnerable in front of someone who's yelling at me. That's not gonna work. But to go through the process of rewiring your whole nervous system, rewiring your patterns, cultivating a sense of resilience, cultivating a sense of open-heartedness, knowing that you're still safe and can take care of yourself, is a practice that takes years. And the respectful confrontation model offers theory, but mostly exercises and practices to help you train yourself to, even in the most heated moments, still stay regulated, still stay present, still stay connected, and for the purpose of having those conversations to get to the root cause of a problem, so that you can find new solutions and come out on the other end, which what I think is important is win-win as opposed to a win-lose scenario.
Thank you, Joe. That's an amazing summary of a life, you know, at least what you've lived so far. What struck me when I followed the training with you was the focus on embodiment. You know, I was really craving it. When Emilia talked to me about your work, I registered right away, and I was impressed that it was actually even more focused on embodiment than I expected. And you know, a lot of people have been exposed to Marshall Rosenberg, you know, nonviolent communication, which is great. But with your techniques or philosophy, and I mean, it's the embodiment. I mean, I've never felt so grounded and powerful. And actually, for me, it was about transforming my relationships and standing in my power, but with so much respect, you know. Can you share a bit about, because later I'll ask you to maybe lead a practice, a small practice.
I'd love to. I'd love to. Yeah.
Maybe we don't have time for the elephant walk, but we can, whatever you want to lead. So maybe talk about why so much focus on embodiment.
Well, I think that's why I started saying that a little bit. I think because, you know, what I would see in a lot of corporate trainings and even in coaching is that you give someone a theory, but that doesn't mean that they've learned it. And a lot of times in trainings, what you'll see is you do a great training. People are really inspired. It's cathartic. They have great breakthroughs. They get a big binder, and then they go back to work, and the next day they try to apply it a little bit. And then a few days later, they think about it, and then 2 weeks later, the binder goes on the shelf, and that's it. And I'm not judging that. I do that too. We all do that in a sense. And my thought was, that's one of the reasons. Why is it, even though we know better, we still have arguments and fights? Because just having the information isn't enough. We are a world filled with enormous information gatherers who I believe haven't learned very much. And learning is truly, it's what I call skills-based learning, that you first gather the information which is in your head. Then you take it into your heart, and it's a personal contemplation. You go into a deeper understanding, you personalize it. What does this information mean to me? How will it change my life? How could it inspire me? How does it challenge me? And that's reflection and deeper contemplation and a deeper understanding, a deeper knowing. But that's still not learning it. Then you come down to your core, into your body, and you try it out. And the first time it usually doesn't go well, but you gather more information. And then you contemplate that information. Then you try it out with more wisdom. And after about 1 million times of doing that, then you begin to rewire your neural pathways. You begin to get it in your body. It becomes integrated, so you don't have to think about it anymore. And that's when you've learned it. And that is like in sports and in athletics. You can't just read a book about football. You can't just read a book about pole vault jumping. You have to do it. And like driving a car or a bicycle, you know, we all get to the point where it becomes second nature. And that's when we become skilled with this. Otherwise, all the energy is still going into, what was that sentence again? And I find that I think Marshall Rosenberg's work is brilliant. And if you don't know it, you should check it out. But again, what I have seen and what I've seen other people have said is that they've got all the right wording, and then they sit across from someone who triggers them, and all the words go out the window. And then they're back into reactive behavior. And that's why the embodiment is important. Embodiment is also important is because the training is about standing in your power. And you won't know what it's like to fully be in your power until you have a felt experience of it. Until you know. And you get to define what power is. in our methodology, we have what's called the 4 pillars of resilient power. And these are all embodied practices, as Stefan would tell you, that it's, and the 4 pillars are grounding, focus, strength, and flexibility. And I developed this is something that I developed because I wanted to redefine what power was, because I didn't feel like I fit into the definition of power. And I think for many of us, we have trauma experiences or bad associations with power where we think it's the same thing as brute force, where if someone's in their power, someone's going to be harmed, or someone's going to be disempowered or oppressed, or something's going to break. And if that's your viewpoint of power, and then you say to yourself, I want to be in my power, then you're not going to be in your power, because you don't want to do it like the example you know, which is unfortunate, which means you go through life not fully standing in your power. So what I did was I redefined it for myself to make it work for me. And where I looked to who I considered powerful were my martial arts teachers and their teachers. And I'm talking about the teachers that were all like 5 feet tall in American feet, and sometimes 4 feet tall actually, and 80 years old. And that they had the capacity, as large men would charge at them, they could take that force and push them, throw them across the room. And the question is, what makes them powerful? It can't be brute force, because they're short and they're old. So what I came up with is that they had mastered, after years of practice through various exercises, the power of grounding, the power of focus. They had the right amount of strength that wasn't violence or aggression, but still strength. And they mastered a certain level of flexibility. And that in the 4 pillars, we explore that you get to feel in your body what a grounded power feels like, what a focused power feels like, what a strong power feels like, and what a flexible power feels like. And the more you do those practices, you get to integrate that in, so that in difficult conversations, you know when you need to call it in, like, oh man, this person's all over the place, I need to get grounded. Or I'm not clear on my messaging, I got to bring in some more focus. Or I'm not feeling courageous enough to really step up and speak, I got to call out my strength. Or I'm noticing I'm too rigid in this situation and no one's yielding, so how can I find a bit of flexibility to maybe get the other to be more flexible? And it's in that flexibility where what is born out of flexibility is the yes and concept. And the yes and concept is the basis of possibility. And that's where the new solutions can emerge. So that's again a general explanation of that.
Joe, I was really touched or impressed, or I really liked that you teach at NASA, because I come from a background of aerospace where the stakes are really high, costs a lot of money, but also lives are at stake. And, you know, in my history of aviation, there's been a few shuttles that were destroyed because of poorly managed confrontations. And I shared with you when I saw the movie about the Challenger, where an engineer was confronting the decision, it was just dominated. It was rolled over by a bulldozer. So how do we prepare leaders to be confronted? Because, you know, as a senior leader, you need to stand on your ground with your vision, but how much confrontation do you welcome to allow the ship to maybe take a new course?
Well, that's a great question. And there's a lot of things I can say about that. I mean, I would start with that. The challenge is particularly in environments like this with CEOs and very cerebral, very much engineers, data-driven environments, to help them feel again the power of the heart, what compassion feels like, what connection feels like. So that's part of the embodied aspect, is that we all know what connection is. At least I would say pretty much all of us as babies, the first thing we experienced was connection. So we know connection. But for most of us, because of our modern society, we've run away from it. It's been beaten out of us, and we've lost a lot of a sense of connection. So helping people remember the importance of connection is important. What I also do is I understand that kind of a brain, and I use this idea of, for me, the issue with respectful confrontation is that if there's a problem, then there has to be a root at least one root cause to that problem. So just coming up with temporary solutions is not going to solve the problem. It's just putting a Band-Aid on a wound. That to really see transformational change happen, you have to be able to map out where the root cause is of the problem. When you identify what the root cause is and you eliminate the root cause, then the problem goes away. So engineers understand that, leaders understand that, scientists understand that. There's many different, and that's the same thing with human behavior. If you're having an issue with someone, it didn't just randomly happen. You can trace it back to root causes. And that the respectful confrontation model helps you to zero in to get to the root causes and address that. Because one of the subtitles we have for respectful confrontation is, respectful confrontation, it's never about the dishes. And that oftentimes we can spend years arguing about the dishes, and we can get a dishwasher and see if that solves the problem, or we could whatever. But the problem isn't going to go away because the dishes isn't the problem. There are deeper issues that you need to get to. So that's one thing. I think what's also important is that when you're dealing in very competitive environments, there's a need to be right. And one of the fundamental things we say in leadership development is that, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? And I think that's, I'm bringing that up because that's some of the questions that some of you had before we started, some of the issues you're having, is to think about that. Two things. Do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? Or do you, and that's one question to ask yourself. Do you want to win or do you want to see new solutions and transformation? And we're very much wired to want to win. And to my Russian friend on here, I know Russian culture, and it's very much about winning, and American culture as well. There are a lot of cultures where the need to win outweighs the need for collaboration and coming up with new solutions or solving a problem. So I think that's where how I'm working with people at NASA is to say, you know, yes, you're smart. Yes, you've got 25 degrees. Yes, you've written 86,000 papers, and you're still having an issue and not communicating well, and you're not being effective in your work. When is that going to take priority? And if I may say, what I think is trending, has been trending for a while around the world in leadership development, is that it's in what I call 21st century leadership, which is a more circular model to leadership as opposed to hierarchical. Is leaders are being asked to show up with more transparency and with vulnerability. And that leaders are finding when they can trust that, like this idea, it's in your vulnerability that your true power is revealed. When you can show up as a leader with vulnerability and transparency, or even as a colleague, then you'll just feel that the people around you will feel more trust and safety. They'll want to collaborate. They'll take more risks. There'll be more buy-in if you have teams. There'll be more joy in the work you're doing. There'll be more of a sense of what I call mutual empowerment, and where people will reveal more of themselves and their gifts. And that is not only beneficial for a work environment, it's also profitable when you get more buy-in from your staff, and taking safe risks.
Mm. It took me a really long time, Joe, to discover that leadership was really about relationship, because I'm an engineer, I'm an MBA. And when I discovered that and I cracked the nut of that, I became a true leader. So my experience with your work is it has the power to completely transform relationships, not just improve them slightly, completely transform, because we actually own our part in the relationship. And if we transform ourselves, we can transform anything. So can you share a bit about, as you prepare to maybe have a confrontation, a respectful one, you need to prepare the power of an intention, what my intention is. And I've used a tiny bit of your work with some of my clients, and their intention is never high enough. Me and my dad, we stop arguing. No, can we actually transform our whole relationship? So when we are together, we feel love for the first time. Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't. Can you share a bit about that? Your power of intention.
I mean, from one thing I can say about that is that when you really understand the power of respectful confrontation, it's a way of maintaining relationships.
Mhm.
We don't put it, I don't feel like I talk to my clients about this, also my executive clients, is that how much time and energy are you putting into developing, deepening, and maintaining your relationships? And instead of just getting your daily tasks done, if you can invest more time and energy, particularly your work relationships, as well as your personal relationships, in cultivating, deepening, and maintaining your relationships, then again, you'll have more safety and trust. The nervous system will relax, right? There'll be less of a sense of fight flight, which is exhausting on the nervous system. And people will drop in and they'll be able to be more open and fluid. There'll be more balance and flow. Most of our time, because if we're not feeling safe or if we are in opposition, our nervous systems are in a state of fight flight. And the enormous amount of energy the body needs to maintain that, we wonder why we burn out. So when you can start developing relationship and cultivating that trust and safety, your nervous system, their nervous system can drop in. You'll be healthier. You'll digest better. You'll sleep better. You'll have sharper, more. You'll cultivate mental clarity, emotional stability, and physical vitality. And so we're in a point where you don't have to worry about burning out. So that's one way to look at it. So it's about maintaining relationship. The definition we use for confrontation is any encounter that deepens relationship, brings individuals closer together, and empowers everyone involved. I'll say it again, and that's in contrast to how I define conflict. A conflict is any encounter that creates separation, the breakdown of relationship, and the disempowerment of another. And that if you think about that a conflict is any encounter that breaks down relationship, creates separation, and disempowers another, sometimes being nice can be a conflict. Sometimes with your chronic nicest, a need to be nice, not speak your truth, and just smile when you should say yes, but you say no, or you should say no, but you say yes, or you don't say anything when an injustice is happening, or you don't empower someone and you just let them flounder. That creates, in my viewpoint, conflict. And that the most effective way to deepen relationship is to have the difficult conversations. If your intention in that is to deepen relationship and empower everyone involved. And what that does, it's the two essential things is that you have to start every confrontation regulated. You can't be triggered. If you're triggered, then you're just setting yourself up for a big fight. And if you want a big fight, knock yourself out, go for it. But if you really want to see transformation happen, it's your job to get present and connected to yourself. And then it's your job, when you start the confrontation, to meet that person where they are. Not where you want them to be, not how you want them to be, but to really open up and engage in a real way. And to really cultivate what I call open-heartedness.
Mm.
And for me, open-heartedness doesn't mean you have to love someone. It simply means that your heart is open. There's a difference. I can have compassion and empathy for someone and I don't have to love them. I can have respect for someone and I don't have to love them. And that's an important part of this. And if you do love them, great. But I think a lot of people think that, they go together. You don't have to like the person you're working with. You don't have to like the person that's in your family. But you can open your heart to them. You can find where they're suffering and have compassion for that. And we're all suffering. I would dare to say that there's not a single creature on this planet that is not suffering. There's not a single human being at this moment, even the person you're thinking, oh, but what about them? They're suffering as well. And that's a huge practice. That's a real practice of courage. And I would call it a warrior practice of the warrior, to cultivate a practice of open-heartedness, even for your adversaries. And that the heart has an electromagnetic field, right? Everything has an electromagnetic field. And there's studies that say that the electromagnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times stronger than the brain. So when I talk about the power of the heart, I'm talking about a real magnetic field. And the more you open your heart, the more attractive you become from the perspective of like magnetism, attraction. The more closed-hearted you are, the more you repel. And the more you trigger fight, flight in others. The more you open your heart, the more you're giving others the space to do the same. And that is a starting point. And that, I don't see that in any other communication models. That's even before you even open your mouth and say a word. And that's the uniqueness of respectful confrontation. The second half of it is, what's the proper words to use? And what's the proper way to deal with other people's reactivity where you don't get harmed and you don't harm them? But the foundation of it is cultivating your own level of open-hearted presence, and with honor and respect, engaging with someone else. And even if you're triggered by things they've done, giving them, in the beginning point, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because a lot of the things you were saying beforehand is that one of the fundamental philosophies in what we do is this understanding that my truth does not equal the truth. And that if you can really go into a challenging conversation with the curiosity of hearing their side of the truth, that's where the new solutions emerge. If you go in telling them they're wrong, if you go in with that kind of attitude, they're going to do this and you're never going to see change. But if you can go in with an open heart, still protected, still taking care of yourself, giving them the benefit of the doubt, saying, listen, this is what I've observed. And this is the effect it's having on me. Tell me what happened for you. What's your side of the story? I guarantee you'll get information you didn't have. And that is the starting point for the new solutions to emerge. That's the starting point, as Stefan says, for lasting change, for cultural change, for relationship transformation.
Mm. Thank you, Joe. We don't have a lot of time, but could you guide us to one of the embodiment practices that you teach?
I'd love to. Okay. So we're going to do a practice that helps understand about a little bit of nervous system regulation. I teach a course at Georgetown University in the School of Government, Department of Conflict Resolution, called Body-Based Skill Building for Navigating Stress and Confrontation. It's teaching these young people who want to go into war zones to resolve conflicts, how to regulate, not burn out, and how to deal with their own trauma experiences, and also support others in war zones in their trauma experience. And I developed this having worked with incarcerated men in California. I've worked extensively with severely wounded combat veterans in the US, helping them with their PTSD and how to communicate and actually not commit suicide that night, in a sense. And I've done a lot of work in the Middle East, working with women's rights organizations, helping them train men to train other men how to stop beating their wives. And again, how to learn how to regulate their anger and reframe power and masculinity. So that's just giving you a context from where I've developed all of this and how you can take that into your relationships and your work and the work that you're doing. So first of all, in this exercise, to say that there's no right way to do this or wrong way, it's about finding your way. And I invite you to do this, to explore this, to really go in with this. And again, it's something that I would do with all of people who suffer from severe PTSD, of helping them find their grounding and presence. And when they start feeling triggered, to use this to make a different choice. So I'd like you to sit in a way where you're not leaning against the back of the chair, but you're sitting more forward at the edge of the chair with your spine straight without being rigid. You're also elongating from the back of your neck. So you tilt your chin in a little bit, you tuck your chin in a little bit, you relax your jaw, relax your belly, relax your shoulders, let your hands rest on your knees or your thighs. And we call this power sit. It's a way of sitting where the most energy can flow through the body, and you eliminate as much tension as you can. So now I'd like you to identify what I would call your core, or your center, and that's in your lower belly. And the way to investigate that is that it's the width of 3 fingers below your navel and 1/3 of the way into the body. So if you put your fingers together like this, and Todd's also demonstrating, I don't know if you see, if you can see his, if you put your fingers together like this, you place your index finger over your navel, where your pinky resides, that's approximately the width of 3 fingers below your navel. And now bring your attention inside of your body, about 1/3 of the way from your body, from the front of the body. So you're identifying a point that's in your lower belly, that's about the width of 3 fingers below your navel and 1/3 of the way into the body. And I invite you to bring your full attention to this spot. And if it feels safe for you, I invite you to close your eyes. This is what I would call your center, your core. It's your center of gravity, creativity, impulse, and what I would say your personal power resides, and is your center of awareness, how you perceive your reality. From your center, become aware of the parts of your body that are connecting with the floor and with what you're sitting on. We call this your contact points. Really feel the slight sensation of the pressing of what gravity is bringing your feet closer to the ground, and your thighs, your pelvis against the seat that you're sitting on. Feeling that sensation of being held. This is a great thing, practice, to whisper like a lullaby to your nervous system. You are held. You are supported. It's a really sweet thing to do if you're outdoors, to allow yourself to drop in, to let Mother Earth support you. One thing I always say, which I believe, is that Mother Earth doesn't discriminate. She holds each one of us equally. So let yourself be held. From your center, become aware of your physical body. Just notice sensations. No judgment. All you're doing actually is listening. Listening from awareness, from your core. Imagine that, not from your ears, but from your core. From intuition, from impulse, from instinct. Sensing. From your center, become aware of your emotions. What emotions are you present to? And with this practice, we're cultivating presence, awareness, and balance and flow. So if you feel that there are emotions present, don't judge them. Simply let them flow through. All feelings are welcome. If you're feeling energy moving through you, let it move through you. It's all welcome. From your center, become aware of your thoughts. Not what are your thoughts, but how are your thoughts? Are they racing? Are they tight and judgmental? Are they spacious and generous? Just notice. From your center, keeping that as the foundation of the practice, now at the same time bringing awareness to your heart, or the middle of your chest, where I would say your heart power resides. Compassion, respect, understanding, dignity. And from your center and from your heart, ask yourself, are you feeling connected at this moment to something larger than yourself? And what does that feel like? That could be something spiritual. It could be humanity. It could be universal life force energy. It could be your highest values. At this moment, from your center and from your heart, how connected do you feel at this moment to something larger than yourself? And now, with more of an awareness of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, maybe spiritually, from your center and from your heart, take a full breath in through your nose, And out through your mouth. So building on this, what we're doing is we're bringing you more into the present moment, your awareness of the present moment, first with yourself. So building on that with now more of an awareness of yourself in this present moment, from your center and from your heart, keeping your eyes closed, become aware of your surroundings in all directions, behind you, above you, smells, sounds. What does it mean to connect with my surroundings from my personal power, my core, and from my heart? How might the surroundings be influencing you? And how might you be influencing your surroundings? Allowing energy to flow and emotions to flow. And with more of an awareness of yourself and your surroundings in this present moment, from your center and from your heart, take a full breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Continuing to build on your relationship with the present moment, with now awareness of yourself, your surroundings in this present moment. From your center and from your heart, become aware of all of those who are on this session, who are participating from around the world. What is your capacity right now in this present moment from your personal power and your heart through this medium called the World Wide Web to connect with these people? Can you feel them? Can they feel you? How might you be influencing them at this moment? And how might they be influencing you? Allowing energy to flow and emotions to flow. And now with more of an awareness of yourself, your surroundings, and all of those who are participating in this session, from your center and from your heart, take a full deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Take a moment to check in with your body, with your whole sense of self, noticing the effects of this practice. What are you noticing? Has there been a shift physically for you? Has there been a shift emotionally for you? Has there been a shift mentally for you? Has there even maybe been a shift spiritually for you? And see if you can anchor that into your whole system. Take that into your nervous system. Let your nervous system remember this, the body's wisdom. Take it into every one of your cells, nurturing every one of your cells. Breathe this, whatever you're experiencing right now, the effects of this into each one of your organs, nurturing your organs. Your brain, your liver, your heart, your lungs. And as a way of closing this practice, let's take one more final breath in, slow breath in through your nose, keep breathing in through your nose, hold it at the top of the breath, hold the breath through your nose, see if you can breathe in a little more, even a little more, hold it, and let the breath just spill out of your mouth. Slowly open your eyes. Look around the room you're in, wherever you are. Shake your body, stretch your body. Make a sound if you're feeling confident, courageous. So that's what we call the core exercise. That's the core of the whole practice of respectful confrontation. It takes into account all of it, and all aspects of the practice. And if you can cultivate this, then any confrontation will not seem easy, but you'll feel confident that you can do it with skill and courage.
Thank you so much, Joe. It was exactly what I would have loved for you to do. So you read my mind. And just for the people here, when I followed the course, the first day I came to my office, and then I came home that night and there was a conflict. And my daughter, who was 16, she said, "Dad, I thought you did a training today. I expect you to be wiser." So next day, I stayed home and do my training, and I did all my training in the room. And then at the end of the day, there was a better appreciation of my dedication to actually improve myself. So I would love Joe to open the lines or open the room for people's questions, comments, observations.
I'd love that.
Anything's welcome for the next 10 minutes. So who would like to take the mic and ask the first question or share the first observation? There always needs to be one to break the ice. I'm going to ask my friend Bhaskar Goswami, Joe, who's a profound meditation yoga teacher who also works. Maybe Bhaskar, you can ask the first question or comment.
Hi, Bhaskar. It's good to meet you.
Likewise, Joe. You know, this is a subject I care so deeply about, and thank you for guiding this beautiful experience and teaching. I have nothing but appreciation. No questions, just appreciation. Thank you.
It would be great to talk to you. I'd love to hear more what you're doing. A lot of the work is about how do we take our practice off the mat?
Yes.
Yeah. And how do we, that's because, and why do I think that's so important? And I say this deeply from my heart, because the planet needs that right now. Yeah. So many beings on this planet needs that. We have such privilege. We have cultivated such wisdom and gifts and practices. And it's time for us to take it out of isolation retreats and off of beautiful retreat centers and offer nothing wrong with that, but and to find ways to bring that into our lives when we go to the supermarket, when we're dealing with healthcare, when we're dealing with a lot of the things we're dealing with.
Yeah. And anyone else would like to ask a question? If not, I'm going to pick someone. I'm really good at that.
Well, I'm seeing here people are asking about other ways of doing this practice. If I may say, can I talk about the reviving the global heart practice? Todd has just every Tuesday morning at 11:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for 45 minutes, we do a global practice online called Reviving the Global Heart, which is bringing in this practice, but bringing in more the concepts of lasting peace. We've developed a really lovely community. That's how I met Stefan for the first time. And you're welcome to join. You can look at the link here. And if you find this practice beneficial, we take it even further into global compassion.
Hi, Joe. It's John De Silva. Thank you so much. It was fantastic. And I really wanted to appreciate that. It's really a gift that you've given everyone. My question surrounds the challenges with engineers. And you've had an extensive experience with it, right? I'm an engineer myself, Stefan is, and we've moved from a world of binary technical aspects to now a spiritual change. And I wanted to really see if you can provide insight on these NASA engineers. How receptive are they to this type of way of handling and balancing their emotions and gravitating, being grounded to deal with difference of opinions and to deal with challenges, given that they've been conditioned for a substantial amount of time on the binary and the technical aspects of life?
It's a great question. I'll try to do that in a few minutes. We need about an hour at least, or a whole evening. I think that's what I started with, and I say that, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? And I think that it's what I also say, so let me put it this way, your question was how receptive are they? And when you get more into the advanced level of the respectful confrontation work, you begin to welcome resistance. So the answer is they're receptive based on how much resistance they have. And that in the world of transformation, whether it's cultural transformation, personal transformation, if there's no resistance, there's no transformation. So in a sense, when I train my trainers, my certified trainers, I train them to be able in their nervous systems and to be able to hold space for resistance. And so I welcome the resistance, and I particularly challenge them to get them into a state of resistance in an open-hearted way, in a respectful way, because that's when they're open to something new, when they realize they can't use, and it's all about getting them out of their heads and into their bodies and their hearts. And I think for those who are the most resistant, what they see happening in the room around them helps them to see it as well. And again, it's really about this idea of it's very 20th century way of thinking. It's like every man, woman for themselves. And that what we're seeing is we can't do it alone anymore. And I think they know that. So if you start from that premise, you can't do it alone. There has to be collaboration because of resources and finance, because of just the way the world is, because of the young generation. They're the dinosaurs in a sense. And so it's a question of showing the profitability of collaboration, and why they may walk away not being totally transformed within themselves. They at least are willing to, like it's teaching an old dog new tricks. They're willing to take on new patterns for the sake of that. But it takes a while. And I enjoy the process because, again, I enjoy the resistance. There's a lot of, people show up most in their resistance. Is that helpful, John?
Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to add one more thing, John. We are doing a full day, but over 4 days, a workshop starting with NASA next week. And just as an example of how word of mouth spread when something works, that limit of 24 attendees, it sold out in 3 days, and there's a waiting list of 51 people. And that's based upon 10 years of people saying, you know, we show up at that workshop and something shifts in my team or something shifts in me. They're a lot of fun to work with.
And I would say also, not for engineers, but I think you can apply this to anyone, using the flexibility pillar to approach every person you engage with to meet them where they're at. That to me is the fun. How I would engage with Stefan, for those of you who know him, is going to be very different from how I engage with someone who doesn't believe in the power of the heart. So I'll come more with data and statistics with them, right? I'll come more with, give me proof. So with every person I engage with, I have to get a good idea of who they are and meet them where they are and speak their language. Because the purpose of it with respectful confrontation is not that you get your message across, that's part of it, but it's more helping the other person to be receptive and malleable to the point that they can shift and open to something new.
Thank you so much, Joe and Todd.
Yeah.
Who would like to ask, maybe we have time for one more question before we wrap up. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, wow, you have a beautiful background.
Oh, thank you, yes. I'm an IT project manager. I've worked in many different levels of companies and countries and cultures globally. One of the question I have is, in IT, and I'm guessing NASA is very similar, there's a lot of push to move like at warp speed and so fast. And how do we make these changes when we're constantly working with different people, different teams? Leadership doesn't have buy-in. So how do we manage that and the exhaustion of feeling like you're starting over every time you have a new team, in balancing versus creating this new dynamic and getting stuff done with the expectations of fast and profit?
I mean, there's a lot there, but I would say what a respectful confrontation can sound like is to say, listen, folks, to your group, I'm noticing that we all tend to want to go fast, and that it seems like every time we do that, we have to start over again. Just letting you know, it's exhausting me.
Yeah,
I'm exhausted, and I'm losing my inspiration. And what I need is to be heard. What I need is that we slow down for a moment and just reconnect. That's a respectful confrontation. You identify the behavior without judging or accusing. You identify the effect it's having on you, and then you say what you need, not what you need them to do. And that's something the engineers have a lot of problem, the NASA people have a lot of problems, that I say, with respectful confrontation, the language of power is the language of feelings and needs. Because a lot of times you can spend 14 million years circling around your opinion about something and their opinion and never get anywhere. But when it drops down to, I'm feeling really discouraged, and what I need is some more encouragement, that cuts right through all the BS and actually gets you into action. So I don't know if that helps, Kristen, but I think at a certain point to just stop and say, let's stop for a moment.
Yeah, I've tried that. It depends on the audience. Sometimes they're receptive, sometimes they're not. So I try to have that, maintain that healthy boundary of like, okay, this project will be over soon and I'll get a different team and we'll move on. Because it's not healthy to, you know, belabor it. If there's not willing for change, then you just have to get it done, I guess. Thank you.
I would need more time to talk with you about that to get, you know, more focused into the core issue there. But
as a man who worked in aviation for a long time with mostly engineers, I just want you to know to keep being persistent, because men, we have been programmed to be in our heads, and if you're an engineer, you've been taught to ignore your feelings. So there's a lot of work you have to do. So I would encourage you to be persistent.
Oh, I actually have, I think I have the opposite problem where I do have, even though I'm a project manager and I'm female, I've worked in IT for 20 years and I have a very engineering architect mind. I usually get along swimmingly with the engineers and the architects. It's more the team dynamics and the challenges with leadership.
So, but if the leadership is men, that's the same issue. So men need a lot of nudging to go in their hearts. Thank you. I just want to thank you, Joe, and thank you, Todd, who was there in the background supporting us. I want to tell the people here that Joe is working around the world, but he has not done a lot of work in Canada. So when we talked, Todd and I and him, this is the first event. Obviously, I'm in Canada, but it's a worldwide event. My intention is, you know, Joe really wants to come to Montreal, and I really want him to come. Says that Joe and I will collaborate to transform Canada, because I believe Canada is, you know, a respectful country in general. Values are, and we could play a bigger role on the world scale. You know, we used to be the Blue Berets and the United Nations. I think we need to come back to being Canadians again and playing our role and bringing peace around the world. So there'll be more events with Joe and Todd around Canada. And
bring more assertiveness to Canada. And I said to Stefan, I'm willing to quarantine for 2 weeks if I need to.
I know. He had his Airbnb reserved in Old Montreal already. So there'll be more. I'll be sending the video, and I'll probably be sharing with you an event that Joe is organizing online, so you can register for that. And I thank you, everyone, for showing up. Thank you. Be peaceful. Do your part in bringing peace.
Be well.
Thank you, guys.